Our lives are strictly limited by space and time. We're specks in the universe, mere sparks in eternity. Do we matter? We want to. And if we're going to matter, it's going to be because of something greater than a speck and more enduring than a spark. And so we try to transcend the mundane, to achieve meaning through that which is more lasting and less limiting than merely me. In this way, we humans frequently turn our focus to the gods, or if you prefer, only one God, as our source of morality. If the gods approve, it's moral. If not, it's immoral. After all, they know a lot. They have the big picture. They put us here to begin with, and they have a major enforcement advantage. So if they exist, and if we can just learn their views, say find their opinions on some stone tablets in the desert somewhere, then ethics is solved. But there's a fundamental problem with this view, which, according to Plato, was first set forth by his teacher Socrates in 399 BCE. It's famously known as the Euthyphro dilemma, and it is our big idea for week 3. In Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro, the title character visits Socrates and confidently asserts, to use the vocabulary of this class, that transcendence is the final factor. Morality, he pompously declares, is entirely determined by what is approved by the gods. Ah, says Socrates, so, my dear Euthyphro, is something moral because the gods approve, or do they approve because it's moral? This sounds like a trick question because it's a trick question. But it reveals something profound. We usually approve of things because we find them to be worthy of our approval, not because we make them worthy. So Euthyphro initially answers Socrates with that experience in mind. The gods approve, he responds, because they find it to be moral. Oops, says Socrates, then you don't really mean that morality is determined by the gods, since you have just admitted that they are only detecting morality, not inventing it. Socrates thus shows that whatever makes things moral to begin with, which the gods only notice after the fact, is actually the final factor. As soon as we concede that the gods are applying criteria, we are conceding that it's the criteria that make it moral, not the gods themselves. Seeing his error, Euthyphro quickly corrects himself. Got it, he says. Of course, what I meant to say was that something is moral because the gods approve. Well, says Socrates, do you mean to say that the gods, without using any criteria, could approve of just anything? And that would make it moral? That our morality is entirely a matter of their whims, moods, arbitrary impulses? Euthyphro remembers an appointment at this moment and gives his regrets that he must rush off without answering. This is called a dilemma because it presents us with two unattractive lemmas, statements, which we must choose between. Philosophy at this point turns violent. We are impaled on the horns of the dilemma. The gods, on the one horn, approve because it's moral. We're impaled, since this means that the gods are not the final factor. It's moral, on the other horn, because they approve. We're impaled, since this means that morality is ultimately arbitrary and incoherent. We need a third way out, an option that we did not initially notice, one that is peaceable, no horn to impale us. The most popular response is that the gods are, by their very nature, perfectly good. They need no criterion, no standard, since their very essence is the standard. But there are two problems with this. First, divine behavior is notoriously erratic and frequently downright embarrassing. Whether we're talking about Greek gods, Roman gods, the god of the Abrahamic religions, Hindu gods, or any of the many other pantheons, we often judge their behavior to be unethical. And when we do so, we're obviously relying on some other standard than their divine nature. But second, and more profound, morality is about living our lives as useful members of humankind. But gods are not members of humankind. And they're not just a little different. They are essentially, by their very essence, non-humans. It makes no sense to say that a being that is, by its very nature, not human, is at the same time, by its very nature, the best human. The only way out, in other words, is to give up on the idea of the gods as the final factor. Some version of the Euthyphro dilemma will stalk us throughout the remainder of this course. It even applies to the more general version of the transcendence factor. Suppose that instead of appealing specifically to gods, we appeal to human projects that focus more broadly on rising above the everyday, say political activism, or alleviating human suffering, or communing with nature, or the enjoyment of art and music. If it is the transcendence itself that makes them moral, then what about all the cases in which transcendence results in evil? Nazis, lynch mobs, and crime families experienced the thrill of rising above the mundane. So we either have the arbitrary and incoherent inclusion of all cases of transcendence as moral, there's one of the horns, or we must pick and choose among them, thereby appealing to some criterion other than transcendence. That's the other horn. That's the Euthyphro dilemma all over again. Clearly, part of what it is to live our lives as useful members of humankind is to rise above the everyday, to be inspired by projects that are bigger than us, that will last longer than us. Even if it cannot be the final factor, when transcendence enables us to be of greater benefit to our community and to humankind without losing ourselves, it is nevertheless a powerful contributor to ethics. And that is the ultimate takeaway from the Euthyphro dilemma, our big idea for week 3.